Connects. Connects extern. Very welcome, dear listeners, to this radio show, Connect Extern, a new issue of this talk radio series on Orange 94.0. My guest tonight is Franciszek Araszkiewicz. Franciszek Araszkiewicz is composer and media artist and has a current exhibition at the Museumsquartier Tonspur. Hello, Franciszek.
Hello, Michael. Hello, everyone.
Hey. We will talk to this in this show with about Franciszek's approach towards composition and media arts. We'll talk about other things too, for sure.
Probably.
Probably, yes. And oops, the microphone is here. Yeah. Franciszek, my first question would be, how when did composition as such approach you as a matter of interest?
Well, it came very naturally and very well, or let's say organically in my case, because when I was a child, listening to music was a kind of natural way of spending time. And then when I was a teenager, I was playing some rock bands, which was just, form of having fun at that time. But there were two events that actually created this sort of very strong emotional link towards composition and contemporary art. So one of them was listening to a Titre Tableau, Opus 39, number 1 by Sergei Rachmaninoff, which is a piano piece which is maybe not all the time considered as a masterpiece of composition, but when I was a teenager and listened to this, fluid structures being played by solo performer, it really affected me deeply, and I strongly recommend everyone to listen to this piece if you don't know it well. So this was one of very important moments, and the second one, more related to new media or contemporary art as such, was actually visiting Paris and the Museum of Contemporary Art, the one opposite to Tokyo Palais, where I've seen the installation Chamber of Time Delay by Dan Graham. I was, I think, 14 years old. It would be very hard to describe this installation verbally, but I will try. The installation is basically a room with mirrors being opposite to each other. What is more, you have two TVs, which are also facing each other, but there are also cameras on those TVs. So you have your image multiplied by infinity in these mirrors. Moreover, we got the image in the on those screens of you multiplied by infinity. But what is crucial, one of those cameras is delayed in time. So you can imagine what's happening when you're moving. You got immediate image moving in one of those screens and multiplied by those mirrors, and you have the same image but delayed in time, screened on another one and being multiplied by. So you have like infinite chains of those realities being opposite to each other. So this is the thing that affected me really deeply when I was a teenager, and in fact it led me towards the matters, the layers, the subjects which are very crucial for me even now.
You stopped at an interesting point. Even now, the matters of your interest. Like I can imagine that, like a young human being seeing the first time an infinite or an, let's say, processed. It's a kind of processing.
Yeah.
This image you said, kind of processed self or image, that it blows the mind because of the options, of the possibilities there.
Yes, indeed. But also the thing that that we actually talked about so many times, that this is just this is not processed algorithmically. I mean, not by the computer, not by analog, the design, but this is pure phenomena that is forged into being part of the artistic situation. But this is just physicality itself that gives us those possibilities to experience all those marvelous phenomena and also to express ourselves by them.
How would you describe the expression by yourself or by the one self?
Well, I would say we are experiencing very deep mysteries just by being. That relates a bit to the project at Tonspur, because it's a project which is about music and graphics derived from the brainwave activity. But I mean, as such existence and exploring and experiences the possibilities which are all around us, very close to us, we are experiencing very deep mysteries, and that's, I think, the core thing. What I mean about expressing yourself, not really, not necessarily very subjective, emotional matters, but rather the mysteries that are all around us and are inside of us as well.
Yes, I was just about to ask you. The mystery of the inside is like the mirroring of oneself in one side, or like the image. What always is interesting for me is when a person occurs in the public talking, like in dialogues, and how this person receives her own identity but inside. So the difference is sometimes very huge.
It's huge. It might be huge, and I mean, this is for me one of very important subjects. Also on slightly different layer, this is something that is very crucial in the piece I wrote for orchestra and brainwaves, which is called Inner Realization. Maybe we'll have time to listen for some excerpt of it. But I mean, you've got the layer of your self-awareness and consciousness. At the same time, you have all the physical phenomena that determine this the self-awareness and consciousness, and this is the real process going on in the physical world. At the same time, constituting our will, our choices, our emotions, our perception.
Pure physicality, you mean?
Yeah, I mean...
Bloodstream, nerves...
Yes, central nervous system, which produces plaques, and those plaques are being captured. I just want to say 2 sentences I was referring to about the piece Inner Realization. In this case, the conductor, while conducting the orchestra, is wearing the EEG scanner on his head, so he's controlling electronics with his brainwaves. And this is the situation I meant, that at the same time he's controlling orchestra in, let's say, casual way, this quasi-divine way that, a conductor has this control, but at the same time his physical brain is being turned into a musical instrument, which is this duality I was talking about.
Let's step back before listening to the piece a bit. Let's step back to this first sensations you had. You mean Rachmaninoff, this piano piece, and this I would say a feedback loop in mirroring, and there the connection I would be interested in. So from there to like going to the media of music. Going to the media of going to the working as a composer. How did this happen? Was this like a natural flow in interest in phenomena, coming together with the musical interest you had?
Yeah. I mean, Dan Graham's installation is obviously one and brilliant form of raising particular questions about our senses, about physical space, about time. But those are questions you can actually raise also with the music material. Those topics of, infinity, of time, of perception, of this duality we were talking about, that we are both,
inside and outside.
So these are things that those topics can be touched also by purely musical matters, musical, phenomena and organization of music material. These are fields I want to explore through music and through particular approaches, both by choosing particular way the sound is produced and being controlled by, but also purely in terms of musical material, so frequencies, rhythms, structures, etc.
Textures. Okay, shall we have a short sip to the piece you mentioned for the EEG scanner? This is a brainwave scanner who is weared by the conductor. While conducting an orchestra piece you've written down in a usual way, like with no music ever.
Yeah, this is the score for this is in a realization recording 3 down.
Yeah, here.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
So I wanted to say that in this particular case, the score for the instrumental part is written traditionally. So there are just notes, of course, with lots of extended techniques. But score is traditional, so it's not generated, for example, by brainwaves. At the same time, in the score, you have instructions for the electronics. So what state of mind and emotion should be obtained. So, for example, relaxed state or aware state, concentrated state, with blinks of eyes and such actions. So
these assignments are for the conductor himself.
While
conducting
as such. So maybe let's have a listen. Okay, so this was the part of the piece Inner Realization for chamber orchestra and electronics governed by brainwaves and electromagnetic fields. The entirety is actually available to listen online on the website Ether. So you can look it up. It's actually the huge maybe not that huge, but very nice that database of Polish electroacoustic music, Ether. So there will be it. Yeah, you can find the entire recording. And the piece was performed. Yeah, I wanted to say that the piece was performed by Orchestra of New Music, Orkiestra Muzyki Nowej, April this year at the opening concert of Krakow International International Festival of Krakow Composers. That's the correct name.
All right. And this is also part of your thesis on
PhD.
PhD.
Yes. So actually, this is the piece that is the subject of the work, and now I'm working on the theoretical paper, which is also the immanent part of the PhD dissertation.
What is the question of the thesis?
Well, this is the self-interpretation of the piece, basically. So there is no actual, theorem to be proved. It's rather about raising questions and confronting some of, let's say, techniques used in this piece in a broader context of techniques that were used in 20th century, at the beginning of the 21st century, in terms of form, in terms of organization of musical sound, in terms of even some more traditional methods of organizing musical sound. So there, for example, are some references to the multi-formula technique by Stockhausen, the thing he incorporated especially in the Licht opera, but not only, also in the mantra, for example. And this is technique where there is a, let's say, self-similarity on micro and macro scale of the composition. So the entire form is derived from the little seeds that spread and create the whole form. So yeah.
What would you assign the seeds in this piece?
Yeah, the seeds are the brainwaves, and the material derived from brainwaves. So I made some sort of how do you say, spectral analysis of the material that was result of experiments with brainwaves in earlier period. And from these analyses, I created scales and rhythmic structures that actually constitute the whole form of this piece. So there is some sort of this Grundgestalt as in dodecaphonic pieces by Schoenberg, for example. So the elementary structure that somehow constitutes the whole macro form of the piece. And this is quite strictly applied here, because there is a I would go too deep into maybe details which do not maybe sound that entertaining, but yeah,
we're not here for
entertainment. Not really. Okay. All right. So yeah, so there is a basic scale, like some sort of series, let's say, which constitutes actually of 11 notes, which are not steps of chromatic scale, but they're like from 1/8 tones division. Only 11 of them, and they are also grouped into particular lengths with particular proportions. And this is actually the material that was present in the first part when there was cello solo part. And each note of this theme is being represented by one part of the composition. So then we have 11 parts of the composition with particular structures. Now we listened actually to 6 of them. Yeah. And their lengths are also the same. The proportions of their lengths is actually entirely the same as proportions of durations of particular pitches in this theme played by the cello at the beginning, cello solo.
Okay.
So this is some sort of...
So to understand it right, it's a quite symmetrical approach?
It's asymmetrical. It's the lengths are not symmetrical. They are in quite complex proportions, and also the intervallic structure is not symmetrical. But there is this idea of deriving the entire form from the material. And what is important here, that this scale was derived from the analysis of the material being effect of using the brainwave scanner as such. So there is again the self-similarity between the electronics layer and the instrumental layer.
I was just thinking that the form has a kind of symmetry in terms of being represented by the material itself.
Yeah, in this sense, yes. I was just referring to the idea of symmetry in most, easy, that you have symmetrical durations, for example, like palindromic form, which I also used in some compositions, and many composers did. For example, I don't know, Schoenberg and Pierre Lunet, there's this famous palindrome when you have the perfect symmetry, even in Bach compositions, such structures with counterpoint. This is and has been some sort of common riddle in in many compositions and common structure. So I was referring to this interpretation of symmetry, or to the symmetry of intervallic structures, which also. But here it's not applied, not in this sense, but of course the symmetry between the form and the material is there.
Let's come to the brainwave, to this special sound generation, let's say, to this special interface, like a new instrument. The instrument would be the scanner, the sound, or how would you describe this instrument?
Yeah, I want to say at the beginning that actually Alvin Lucier was the first one to incorporate this technique into music composition back in 1950s. And what he did in the piece called Music for Solo Performer was he attached the EEG scanner to his head, which was capturing and amplifying alpha waves. Alpha waves are responsible for relaxed states, and those waves were amplified by the device, making the membranes, vibrate. And as they were vibrating, so when Alvin Lucier was in a relaxed state while on stage, the percussive sounds were appearing. So this was the first attempt, and this was milestone in terms of conceptual approach, because normally, let's say traditionally, what you got on stage is the activity of human beings. And here, the music appeared when the performer was passive, was relaxed, so he increased his alpha waves. And since that time, so it was 50 years ago, the technique has seriously developed and became not only a part of very serious medical research, but has been used also in biofeedback, in psychology, in diagnosis, in learning languages, for example, at relaxed state, and those devices became quite precise and available. So yeah, at the beginning of the 21st century, there are many composers which made attempt to actually use brainwave scanners to generate music and to control music. And I'm one of them. I've been using this technique since 2015, actually. This was the premiere time. So what you basically had is the device that captures the activity of brain in real time. In my case, in the case of the hardware I use, this device captures brainwaves on 8 frequency levels, which are alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and theta, but alpha, beta, and gamma split into the higher and lower registers. That's why 8. And those frequency levels represent different mental states. So, like, say, for example, alpha is relax, beta is like awareness, delta is responsible for rapid reactions, delta is responsible for deep sleep, while theta is relates to meditative states, let's say. And this device, this type of device, gives the stream of data from those measurements of those brainwaves in real time, which can be afterwards processed. So this is the moment when artistic choices take their part. So how do you process this data? Because obviously the activity of brain doesn't produce sound as such, or very silent ones. Like, I don't know, when you splash brain on wall, it produces. Yeah.
Let's not think about that. Let's think about the beauty of this.
Yes, indeed. But I mean, as such, it obviously doesn't produce loud sounds. So you have to come up with the way that.
Excuse me. One thing is that wasn't there an attempt? Two things came to my mind when you said the brain waves are not producing sound. The one thing is that there was a kind of esoteric attempt to make the speed of planets around stars to sound, like calculate them up or down, like this one. And the second, this was like, I think by Joachim Ernst Behrendt did this, I think. He's like a jazz journalist from the 60s till, who was a kind of on a metaphysic approach towards music history, musicology. And the second I missed. I should always start with the second one and then to the first one. But maybe it comes to my mind. If it wouldn't it be possible, like this data you derive from the brainwaves, isn't that a possibility to bring this in the listenable area?
I mean, this is possible, and this has been done many times. I mean, basically those frequencies are too low to be converted one-to-one into hertzes of vibrations of.
Starting from 40 hertz, something.
They are below. This is the one of approaches. So to make it one-to-one, or for example, multiply by 2 or by 10, and then transform this stream just as it is. And this has been done actually, for example, by Marek Chołoniewski in his piece Cymatic Brain. So he used the frequencies as they are, and moreover he was using the Chladni waves. I don't know whether you do. The Chladni waves are physical shapes which for example, on the surface of water, or where you get, sand or something like that, and you have this on the plate of metal, and you play the particular frequency, then this matter is being organized by the frequencies as such, which resonate in this, let's say, for example, piece of metal. So he used frequencies from his brainwaves as such, to control, to translate it basically into frequencies of sound easily, without any further processing. And at the same time, he used those frequencies to control shapes. So this is also the possible approach, one of many possible.
And you're like working with, or you developed an Max MSP patch for this data. How did you approach this?
Yes, the system, the software I'm using is the result of many experiments. and to obtain by particular mental states the sounds that I find somehow special and somehow connected with those states. But it's still live control, so every time the sound will be different. It's, you know, for example, you can compose the music for violin, and the thing you can expect is the sound of violin, but the material will be different. For example, will be different in terms of frequency or rhythm or anything. Or you can use extended technique, then it doesn't sound like violin. So this is similar thing with my approach. So I sort of developed sub-patches or instruments that are assigned to particular frequencies. And this is actually the thing I've done now at Tonspur Passage 78, Echoes of Mind.
Yes. Let's talk about that. Yes,
because basically now I'm finishing the.
Just wanted to make a clear statement. Franciszek Araszkiewicz is my guest tonight, and he's talking about his current installation at the Museumsquartier Tonspur, which can be visited for 1 month.
Till November. Actually.
Till November.
Till November.
So till November, you can walk through this tunnel and listen to a composition, let's say, made by Franciszek Araszkiewicz and his brainwaves, a channel. But we were talking now before about the
way the sounds are being produced. Yes. So most of the time I use it in live situation, but this is not the case here in when
this installation. And
this installation is you know, not interactive sound installation when we have the fixed composition, and you have 8 audio channels which are assigned to 8 frequency levels, as I said, and all of them produce sounds which are responsible for each mental state on the particular, let's say, instrument I designed for this this frequency layer.
The frequency level is what? What is the frequency level? You said the lowest is delta, which is responsible for and this proportion is kept. So the lowest frequencies are delta waves, deep sleep from the brain. Yes, deep sleep. Okay.
Then we have theta, which is meditative state. Then we have alpha waves. These ones are easy to control in live situation, but actually you cannot control, in my case at least, you cannot control theta or delta waves in live situation. But this is something I was capable to do while working on Echoes of Mind, because this is recorded, so I was able to.
You mean the composition for the installation?
Yeah, indeed. So Echoes of Mind, that's the title of Tonspur 78. So then the higher is alpha, then you have beta, and then you have gamma, which is the highest. You can easily Google. This is 6, but this is actually what I meant, that alpha, beta, and gamma split into the higher and lower registers. So that's why you have 8. Yeah, and what I meant is so this proportion of the frequency ranges. Maybe I won't now tell you, the exact. You can easily look it up in Google. I mean, what is the real hertz? Scope.
I think much more interesting is like how you approach this with the music.
So I mean, I obviously kept the proportions between those frequency ranges as they are. So, for example, the lowest tones are produced by delta waves. So these deep sleep waves. So
you hear more states of mind at the same time. Do I understand you right?
Yeah. I mean, even now, or when we play live, because we did play live with brainwaves, obviously some of, I mean, not one particular, your brain always produces brainwaves. That's the matter of proportion. And for example, now probably we got quite high beta waves because we're sort of focused. But who knows? Maybe if we attach the mildwave mobile to our heads now, we would also have high alpha waves, because at the same time we are focused and relaxed. This is possible, actually. So what you got at Echoes of Mind, you have 8 channels going on. So all layers are being active throughout the whole composition, but each layer, let's say, has its solo. The part when it's dominating, and I've chosen the parts which are satisfying. I mean, in terms of music material, because this is actually the core point of my interest. What sort of music material we can obtain through those experiments. Not only the same, let's say, poetry of the situation that our brain becomes some sort of music instrument, because this is actually the concept, as I said, that Alvin Lucier came up with 50 years ago. But what's the core interest for me is how can we, or maybe not how, but what sort of music material can we obtain naturally, just by the activity of our brain as such, with the hardware and with the used way of processing this data. And this is the core thing, and this is the results of these experiments might be heard in the Tonspur till November. So
shall we go to another piece?
Maybe we'll play Beyond the Fields.
Beyond the Fields, okay.
Yeah.
This was here we are.
Yeah. So
exactly. Okay, this was
Let's say a few words about that. So Beyond the Fields was played in Vienna in February this year, and was played by Fischer on the alto saxophone, tenor saxophone with the feedback system, and the violin by Alexander Konabetor on trumpet and electronics, and by me, and I was playing brainwaves and electromagnetic field sensor. So
the electromagnetic field sensor is also very performative thing where Franciszek Araszkiewicz uses the electromagnetic rays from computers, from beamers, from any electronic device which is available at his hand range at the performance. And these electromagnetic rays are processed through an electromagnetic scanner, also in the same system as the brainwaves?
No, this is very different system, and in this case we don't have this heavy processing, I would say. This is like translating hertzes into hertzes, because electromagnetic fields as such are, of course, the range of electromagnetic fields is huge, but the one being produced by devices such as computers or laptops or something like that can be easily translated into hearable frequency layer. So here there is less question with the way it is being processed.
Beyond the Fields from February in Vienna.
Of Theater, yeah.
This is Beyond the Fields from Vienna in Off Theater in February this year with Franciszek Araszkiewicz on electrostatic scanner and brainwaves, Alexander Granepeter on trumpet and electronics, and myself on saxophone percussion at this moment. Franciszek Araszkiewicz is my guest tonight in this radio program, talking about his approach towards composition, where he in the last 3 years uses extensively or is interested in the incorporation of brainwaves derived by a scanner made to sound through a Max MSP patch and electrostatic scanners. We were talking about these processes which Franciszek where Franciszek arrived to this kind of thinking in music composition. I would now like to ask Franciszek the context in which you would pose this thing. We were talking about when we're talking about we had in some very nice, no problem. We had some very nice talks about the things which are beyond this world, kind of thing. Would you have some hints?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all those topics have some common ground, and it's about exploring something that is, around and is constituting the reality. And it's constituting the reality, if possible, around us and inside of us, and also outside. But
I think we give it a break because I think Franciszek needs a bit of this is for water. We go on. Okay, back again on air. Hello, listeners. This is Connects Extern with Franciszek Araszkiewicz. We just now heard another piece of Beyond the Fields, recorded in February of Off Theater in Vienna by Franciszek Araszkiewicz, Alexander Granepeter on trumpet, electronics, and myself on saxophone. We were talking just before on the context of your thinking about music, about the approach towards arts. Could you tell a bit about that?
So, brainwaves, electromagnetic fields, infinite mirrors, all those subjects have something in common, and this is actually the core of my interest in both composition and contemporary art. So, all those, marvelous phenomena that have been somehow explored already by science or by philosophers, but they also provide a wonderful framework for organization, for organization of sound in this particular case, and by it they allow to look for new musical languages. And this refers both to brainwaves, both to electromagnetic fields, and also other things like, sonic black holes we're talking about many times. This is a very interesting topic, objects which, make sound rotate in space or orbit in space, sounds as such as vibrations of air. And, it's both question of the let's say poetry of the way the sound is produced, either by the brain by activity of the brain, or by invisible fluctuations of electromagnetic, fields that we capture in live set to create, additional electronics layer. This is one thing, and the other thing is the music material, and which is naturally produced by this complexity of those phenomena, and the way we can learn, we can develop new musical languages through those experiences.
Very nice sentence. Now it is that you will have a live presentation at Museumsquartier on October 12th.
Yes, indeed. So I really welcome and invite to come.
It will be in Museumsquartier Raum D.
Yes, indeed.
In 12th October at something 7 p.m. around.
Probably. I mean, this will be announced on the Tonspur website and Museumsquartier website.
Okay. So if you're in Vienna and you're interested in how brainwaves can make music, Franciszek Araszkiewicz is the man in Vienna at the moment who can perform it, and afterwards for sure has fun to talk about it too.
Yes, indeed.
In different contexts. I don't know if the time is enough to open another field, but you're also working as a media artist. Could you give us a short introduction in your approach towards media arts?
Yeah. I mean, the core of interest is the same as in compositions, in the field of composition itself. So when I'm working with objects or with visual layer, it's pretty much the same. For example, the installation I've done back in 2011 was based on chaotic pendulum. So this is quite different, but still the same. There is a physical object which moves in trajectories you cannot predict, and minimal changes change the trajectory dramatically. I mean, you cannot predict how this will actually evolve. You could, because I think we don't have enough time to discuss it in detail, so all those things you can find on my website, which is www.araszkiewicz.fr. But if you just Google my name and surname, it will be very easily found. So I recommend to look it up. There are some materials. So
then I would say we close the show with the music of yours. Yes. Yeah. Which one shall we?
We got many. So maybe audio art. Maybe audio art.
Okay. Where are we?
Up. And I will use just those 10 seconds to underline that the echoes of mind at Tonspur Passage 78. When it comes to visual layer, I've done together with Małgorzata-Petelenz, which will arrive in Vienna tomorrow, so we are expecting her. And we've done the visuals together, also entirely derived from brainwaves, so the shapes of brainwaves and the sonograms of brainwaves.
So first, before we play the music, I would like to thank Franciszek Araszkiewicz for being here.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
My pleasure. It was an interesting talk, and I hope your listeners enjoyed it too. Next up is Franciszek on 12th of October at the Museumsquartier Raum D, and in this radio program, the next live program is on 11th of September with an edition of Context, talk soundscaping and reading series with Sina Klein. Thanks again, Franciszek Araszkiewicz. We now listen.
Thank you very much.
We listened to a piece we did together in
Krakow, Audio Art December
Festival in November last year for 1 minute. Thanks and bye bye till next time.
Bye bye.